Ozo. That is a way to say hello or a formal type of greeting in Potawatomi. My name is Adriana Black, and I am the founding director to the Odehmenan Health Equity Center, or Odeh Center for short. On behalf of my team, I want to welcome you all to our second Odehmenan Health Equity Speakers Program, Black Feminism, Racial Realism, and Organizing for Health, a reading circle. For a bit of background, Odehmenan translates to this heart of ours in Potawatomi. The Potawatomi people are one of the original peoples of the Chicagoland area and one of the Three Fires Confederacy nations who know this area as their ancestral home. I want to give full credit, appreciation, and gratitude to Donald Parrott, our friend, language expert, and elder who has been on the journey of creating this space since its inception and has provided all translations. In the spirit of further transparency, I wanted to share the agenda with you all today so you all know what's going to be going on. As you can see, the bulk of our discussion will center on reading passages from two texts that our speakers will introduce. This hour-long portion will be recorded. The half-hour optional debrief will not be recorded. Before I introduce our brilliant speakers, I want to share our community agreements for the day. They are now on the screen, and I will read them out loud, and we'll pause at the end for any comments, questions, or edits. We will use I statements and will not speak for groups of people. We will recognize our own power, privilege, and positionality in this space and hold ourselves and others accountable. We will center non-dominant groups in our dialogues. We will assume good intentions while also owning that good intentions sometimes have a negative impact. We acknowledge that being uncomfortable is not the same thing as being unsafe. Thus, we welcome productive discomfort in this space. We will take up space and leave space as needed. We will keep what is shared here and share what is learned here. We will seek first to understand and then to be understood. I'll pause for a second, let everyone take that in. Any questions, comments, edits? All right, without further feedback, I will proceed under the assumption that we are all in agreement with these statements. Thank you. And now our speakers. It is my pleasure to welcome two speakers here today. Today, I am joined by both Dr. Tffany Ford and Tynetta Hill from the UIC School of Public Health. Over the course of the Odeh Center's first year, we will be spotlighting the 7 health sciences colleges and schools in this series. We started with the College of Pharmacy in October. Now with the spring semester up and running, we are spotlighting our School of Public Health. Dr. Tffany N. Ford is an assistant professor in the Community Health Sciences Division at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Public Health. Her research explores how anti-Black structural racism operates via policy, governance, and social norms to unequally distribute the resources that contribute to subjective well-being. Specifically, Dr. Ford is interested in place-based policy and practice interventions to support health status, financial security, and social support and relationships, 3 core determinants of subjective well-being for people racialized as Black. She is the director of the Black Feminist Policy Lab at UIC, an abolitionist, queer Black feminist learning community that centers love, equity, and truth in the development of a policy agenda to support people racialized as Black in the US. Tynetta Hill-Muhammad is a community organizer, member of UMedics, and researcher at the University of Illinois Chicago. Their work is rooted in Black queer feminist and abolitionist organizing, transformative health education initiatives, and transnational movement spaces. They truly believe in the power of people's narratives in creating an organizing vision for the future. So without further ado, Dr. Ford and Tynetta. I'm going to switch the camera view.
Hello.
Hey.
It worked.
You good?
I'll wait until we switch the camera around.
Okay, let me just check it through really quick.
Well, while we're switching, hey, there it is. While
Okay,
we're
we good.
switching,
Okay.
I just want to say thank you to the staff at the Odeh Center for inviting us here today, for welcoming us here today, and thank all of you all, both in person and virtually, for spending your Tuesday afternoon with us. Y'all are here for a reading circle. And I'm wondering how many of you all have heard of a reading circle before or participated in a reading circle. You could like raise your hand, or if you're in the chat, say a little something, or if you're virtually, say a little something. Are we getting anything? Okay, grand. Okay, grand. So I am glad for this to be our first experience of this. So in today's reading circle, we're gonna go around in a circle and we're gonna read passages from two texts. Tynetta, can you wave your hand, Tynetta, so they know who we're talking about? Okay, Tynetta will explain more about the process in a bit, but really that's the gist. We're gonna go around, we're gonna read together. So you all may be wondering, why a reading circle? Like, I could have given a lecture for this time. We could have spent our entire hour in discussion with one another, but we chose a reading circle. We are asked to do so many things in our busy lives. One of the many things that those of us who are students and also teachers are asked to do regularly is to read. And I would argue that reading is one of the most important, but also hardest things that we can do. And it's hard because it requires us to slow down, to quiet our brains, to ignore the many outside influences that are fighting for our attention. And it requires us to focus on the words on the page. Reading is critical because much of the history of this land that we find ourselves on is in books that many of us have never even heard of. Now, when I was younger, when I was a little kid growing up, I was one of those public library kids, right? Like I was there all the time. I used to devour books like it was nothing. We actually have my dad in the room, so he can vouch for the fact that like I really did. I ran through like the young adult section right at the library. And I think that as a kid, I thought that that's what life would be. Like I thought I could just like read all the time, right? But unfortunately, that is not what life has necessarily looked like for me, right? Because unfortunately, time is an unequally distributed resource. It's an unequally distributed determinant of subjective well-being. Time is classed, time is gendered, time is racialized. Thus, we actually do not all have the same 24 hours. So my K through 12 education, college, grad school, and the work world really like sucked the reading right out of me. I found myself so busy making money, trying to rest, reading for a particular purpose, right? And also doing all the other things to exist as an adult in this life, that I lost my practice of reading. And reading is a practice, and reading is valuable. So today, we asked you all here to read with us. And I want to provide some brief historical grounding of the two texts that you see on the screen before we read the passages. The Combahee River Collective Statement, written in 1977, is a key text that establishes the core tenets of contemporary Black feminism. In 1977, Jimmy Carter was president of the US. The statement was written by the Combahee River Collective, a Black feminist lesbian organization that was active between 1974 to 1980. The Combahee River Collective came together because neither the feminist movement nor the civil rights movement reflected the distinct needs of Black women and lesbians. Without these perspectives and political stances, they knew that ongoing movements for Black health and women's health really would skip right over them. The group and the statement was named after the Combahee ferry raid. Has anyone here heard of the Combahee ferry raid? This was a successful mission carried out by Harriet Tubman on June 2nd, 1863, at the Combahee River in South Carolina. In this major Civil War military operation, Harriet Tubman led 150 Black Union soldiers in freeing over 750 enslaved people. So that's where the collective and the statement got their name. Derrick Bell published Racial Realism in the Connecticut Law Review 32 years ago. in 1992. In 1992, George H.W. Bush was president of the US. He had just lost the 1992 election to William J. Clinton, who would be inaugurated in 1993. So just grounding the timing of these texts. On March 3rd, 1991, Rodney King, a Black man living in Los Angeles, California, was tased and beaten by 4 white police officers. The assault was caught on camera. On April 29th, 1992, the officers received a not guilty verdict, which set off days of protests and rioting. This resulted in over 50 deaths, thousands of injuries and arrests, and $1 billion in property damage. On May 1st, 1992, President George H.W. Bush ordered military troops and riot-trained federal officers to Los Angeles to end the protests. So I came across both of these texts that we're gonna read today over like 5 years ago. And I've read them repeatedly since then. When I think about Black feminism, I think about the Combahee River Collective statement. When I think about Black health, Black joy, Black well-being, and what we might do to advance it, I think about Racial Realism by Derrick Bell. These are 2 texts that I consistently return to for grounding in my own thinking and practice. So when I was asked to make an offering to the Odehmenan Health Equity Speaker Series, these texts felt really important to share. So whether you've read the 2 texts for today like dozens of times, or whether this is your introduction to them, I hope that the words that we will read today bring you something new. I hope that they encourage you to think differently about something old. And I hope that they invite you to begin conversations that you may not have otherwise had. And with that, I'm gonna pass it off to Tynetta to establish our circle for today.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me online and in person? Y'all can hear me? Yes. Okay. Come on, y'all. We're gonna be reading out loud. Thank you so much, Dr. Ford, for that amazing grounding. I've had the privilege of working with Dr. Ford for almost a full year. And I've learned so much, one, in my understanding and praxis of what it means to be a Black queer feminist abolitionist organizer, and also be a researcher and integrate those things into each other. I am also a circle keeper. And so a part of my work outside of being a student here is that I hold circle spaces for folks, particularly within a restorative and transformative justice framework. So I'm gonna do our grounding for what this circle process is, because, you know, hopefully there's no harm here. So we won't be processing through that. So throughout history, people have sat in circles, right? You've sat in a circle to tell a story, to review a process, or to just be in deeper relationship with another person. Has anyone been to a campfire circle? Okay, yes. You've probably told some really great stories there. Unlike a podium or a speech, as Dr. Ford let us know, this gives us all a way to hear each other and understand the reasons why people joined us today and the ways that this space makes them feel. We're not going to speak at you, we're asking you to speak with us. Interestingly enough, right, our bodies are also circulatory systems. So earlier, we had the explanation of the center, which is Odehmenan, and it means our hearts are ours. Our hearts are ours, right? Our hearts are integral to that circulatory system process. It delivers the oxygen and nutrients, but it also takes away waste, right? So circles are all around us. In qualitative research processes and practices, circles are called focus groups. And folks' stories inform narrative data to analyze a topic, an experience, or an understanding, right? This circle is a group facilitation process, meaning that we are in the process together. However, it is led by me and Dr. Ford. Thank you so much. And we will build this space around our shared texts, narratives, and personal experiences. Please allow this space to give you the oxygen to breathe and also take away the waste of the world in the forms of white supremacy, imperialism, and hegemonic thinking and practices. Take space as you need it and make this space for you and others accessible in your lived identity and privileges while we read. So for this circle process, folks are going to read in a semi-popcorn manner, right? I won't call on you if you don't want to speak. But folks who are interested in reading, if you could take the time right now to raise your hand or drop your name in the chat, I'm going to write down those names. And then throughout our reading time, I'm going to call on those folks. So we're going to take 5, maybe 2 minutes to do that. And if you could tell me your name, I'll write those down and then we'll continue. Okay?
And yeah, and just a quick pause here. George in the online, I see that you have raised your hand. Feel free to unmute. Can you hear me, George?
Good afternoon. Yes, I can. Oh, I was just raising my hand to Tynetta's question of have you ever been in a camp circle?
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you for participating online. I appreciate that. All right. I'll let you all keep going.
Awesome. And can I get those names out the chat, please?
Yes. So in the chat, feel free to raise your hand now using the raise hand feature if you are cool to read. We don't want to call on anyone who's not prepared or wants to read. Or just put in the chat, I'll read, whatever works. Currently, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so it might be everyone in this room, but chat, people online, we don't want to exclude you. So if at any point you want to read, just pop it into the chat and we'll make it happen.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I got 4. You can read it. What's your name? Please correct me if I say your name wrong. I apologize in advance. Awesome. Thank you all so much for taking that pause with me. I think it's really important that we don't just ask people to read in this space. Some people are here to listen. And also, reading can be a little nerve-wracking in front of other folks. So accessibility wise, you may not want to read out loud, right? So I just want folks to know that throughout this space, it's okay if you don't know a word. It's okay if you don't know how to say a word. And it's also okay if you opted out of reading. Silence is also okay while folks are digesting the material. And so if folks take a moment to pause or if something happens in that nature, that is okay. We want to be, I think I said this, uncomfortable doesn't mean unsafe, right? In one of our conversations before today. So I want to give us some history. Indigenous folks of Turtle Island have used circle processes to reconcile harms in their communities in a process we now call restorative and transformative justice. Sitting in circle allows us to see the full face, body, and expression of another person while we engage in a conversation that we hope transforms us. Today, we're sitting in a circle to read, reflect, and renew. Read, reflect, and renew our commitments to our community. Happy Black History Month. As we sit in this space, it's important for us to reflect on the values we want to bring here. I'd implore you to look deeply at your neighbors and feel the words that they may say or not say when they're speaking. Our circle today is influenced by the words of John O'Neill, which are, the rules of the story circle are the rules of civic participation in society. You agree to listen, you agree to respect. John O'Neill was a founder of the Free Southern Theater, a field secretary of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and a founder of Junebug Productions. He created the story circle as a theater person, which is another method of artistic expression used in the Free Southern Theater. Here, I also want to add that the idea of respect, even though we think is subjective, it can be subjective. So anything said here that infringes on the life, autonomy, and safety of another will not be acceptable. Awesome. Does everybody understand that? Okay, I gotta make sure I say that, RESP, CC, all that good stuff. And so as we get started, I want us to think about our personal value. Thank you. Take a moment of reflection of a question by Ella Baker, which sparked reflection in me as an organizer, which is, who are your people? We'll take a second for that. Think about who your people are and how you want to treat them in this space, how you want to embody this text and move it forward into your life. Amazing. We read earlier some community agreements, but now I also want to offer a value that is really important to me as a now public health master's student. And it is to remember that health is at the center of all isms that seek to destroy people, right? So we're not reading through these texts to gloss over, to be in viewership. We are understanding and integrating these texts into our life and understanding of the dismantling of oppressions, whether that is racism, sexism, white supremacy that exists throughout the world, right? So just make sure you embody that. Okay, we're gonna get started. Y'all ready?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's gonna be right up there. We got you. Trust me. POP, hold it down.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask Dr. Ford to read our first passage once it comes on there.
Just so y'all know, I get a little theatrical. Right, we're ready for the first one. You can go forward to yep, thank you so much. And are you gonna then do the clicker? Cool beans. Ahem, ahem. We are a collective of Black feminists who have been meeting together since 1974. During that time, we have been involved in the process of defining and clarifying our politics, while at the same time doing political work within our own group and in coalition with other progressive organizations and movements. The most general statement of our politics at the present time would be that we are actively committed to struggling against racial, sexual, heterosexual, and class oppression, and see as our particular task the development of integrated analysis and practice based upon the fact that the major systems of oppression are interlocking. The synthesis of these oppressions creates the conditions of our lives. As Black women, we see Black feminism as the logical political movement to combat the manyfold and simultaneous oppressions that all women of color face.
Wow, what a preamble right there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask that Caesar, you read next for us, okay? I'm gonna bring the mic to you.
All right, y'all. Black feminist politics also have an obvious connection to movements for Black liberation, particularly those of the 1960s and 1970s. Many of us were active in those movements: civil rights, Black nationalism, the Black Panthers, and all of our lives were greatly affected and changed by their ideologies, their goals, and the tactics used to achieve their goals. It was our experience and disillusionment within these liberation movements, as well as experience on the periphery of the white male left, that led to the need to develop a politics that was anti-racist, unlike those of white women, and anti-sexist, unlike those of Black and white men.
Wow, the emphasis at the end. Ms. Shelley, can I have you read for me? And please correct me if I said your name.
Michelle. We realize that the liberation of all oppressed peoples necessitates the destruction of the political economic systems of capitalism and imperialism, as well as patriarchy. We are socialists because we believe that work must be organized for the collective benefit of those who do the work and create the products, and not for the profit of the bosses. Material resources must be equally distributed among those who create these resources. We are not convinced, however, that a socialist revolution that is not also a feminist and anti-racist revolution will guarantee our liberation.
I think
Wow.
we might have skipped a couple slides in here. Can we go back like two? Yes. Can you go back again?
So we missed two.
So this is where Caesar read, and then can you go to the next one? This is next.
Okay. Rebecca.
We believe that the most profound and potentially most radical politics come directly out of our own identity, as opposed to working to end somebody else's oppression. In the case of Black women, this is particularly repugnant, dangerous, threatening, and therefore revolutionary concept, because it is obvious from looking at all the political movements that have preceded us that anyone is more worthy of liberation than ourselves. We reject pedestals, queenhood, and walking 10 paces behind. To be recognized as human, levelly human is enough.
That is a bar.
Wow,
Okay.
let's say that again. To be recognized as human, levelly human is enough.
Can you say your name?
Sure. Lorena. Although we are feminists and lesbians, we feel solidarity with progressive Black men and do not advocate the fractionalization that white women who are separatists demand. Our situation as Black people necessitates that we have solidarity around the fact of race, which white women, of course, do not need to have with white men, unless it is their negative solidarity as racial oppressors. We struggle together with Black men against racism, while we also struggle with Black men about sexism.
Granita, can I have you read? I'm coming to you fast, quick, in a hurry.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's read it again though, so we can
Should
get
we
it in
read
the
it
flow.
again? Okay.
Thank you for the intro to it.
Although we are feminists and lesbians, we feel solidarity with progressive Black men and do not advocate the fractionalization that white women who are separatists demand. Our situation as Black people necessitates that we have solidarity around the fact of race, which white women, of course, do not need to have with white men, unless it is their negative solidarity as racial oppressors. We struggle together with Black men against racism, while we also struggle with Black men about sexism.
And I'm gonna go to the next one. That was on me. We're gonna do, can you read? No, I
Right.
know, that was my fault. That was my fault. That was my fault.
I meant
Can you
this
read
one
again?
again.
That was beautiful. Thank you. That's on me.
You gonna hit us with the back to back? Thank you, yes.
We realize that the liberation of all oppressed peoples necessitates the destruction of the political economic systems of capitalism and imperialism, as well as patriarchy. We are socialists because we believe that work must be organized for the collective benefit of those who do the work and create the products, and not for the profit of the bosses. Material resources must be equally distributed among those who create these resources. We are not convinced, however, that a socialist revolution that is not also a feminist and anti-racist revolution will guarantee our liberation.
Yes, Marilyn, who is online, are you able to join us and read the next passage on the screen?
Yes, I am.
Perfect, thank you.
A political contribution which we feel we have already made is the expansion of the feminist principle that the personal is political.
Thank you. We have a great deal of criticism and loathing for what men have been socialized to be in this society, what they support, how they act, and how they oppress. But we do not have the misguided notion that it is their maleness per se, i.e. their biological maleness, that makes them what they are. As Black women, we find any type of biological determinism a particularly dangerous and reactionary basis upon which to build a politic. Ooh, more in the chat. All right, Cindy, feel free.
Yes,
Next
come on
one.
into the circle.
Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you be a little bit louder? I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay. The major source of difficulty in our political work is that we are not just trying to fight oppression on one front or even two, but instead to address the whole range of oppressions. We do not have racial, sexual, heterosexual, or class privilege to rely upon, nor do we have even the minimal access to resources and power that groups who possess any one of these types of privilege have.
Thank you. We have another participant. Charlem, go ahead. My mistake. Go ahead.
No problem. As Black feminists, wait, which part?
This is where we're at.
That one, Tiffany?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wait. No. It should be the one that says page 5 at the top. It should start with in the practice of our politics. So
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt
No, you're
you.
good.
That's okay. In the practice of our politics, we do not believe that the end always justifies the means. Many reactionary and destructive acts have been done in the name of achieving correct political goals. As feminists, we do not want to mess over people in the name of politics. We believe in collective process and a non-hierarchical distribution of power within our own group and in our vision of a revolutionary society. We are committed to a continual examination of our politics as they develop through criticism and self-criticism as an essential aspect of our practice.
Thank you. Now George online.
As Black feminists and lesbians, we know that we have a definite revolutionary task to perform, and we are ready for the lifetime of work and struggle before us.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Can I kick us off with racial realism?
Yes. I'm gonna pass it back to Dr. Ford. We also have another person in the room who is okay with reading. And we'll go again. So folks didn't just read once, you'll read again if you want to.
And the racial realism passages are a little longer, so if you decide to pass, nobody's gonna judge you. I know, I told y'all, look, okay. Y'all thought I just said it for fun. Yes.
I can read after you, Dr. Ford.
Okay. The struggle by Black people to obtain freedom, justice, and dignity is as old as this nation. At times, great and inspiring leaders rose out of desperate situations to give confidence and feelings of empowerment to the Black community. Most of these leaders urged their people to strive for racial equality. They were firmly wedded to the idea that the courts and judiciary were the vehicle to better the social position of Blacks. In spite of dramatic civil rights movements and periodic victories in the legislatures, Black Americans by no means are equal to whites. Racial equality is, in fact, not a realistic goal. By constantly aiming for a status that is unobtainable in a perilously racist America, Black Americans face frustration and despair. Over time, our persistent quest for integration has hardened into self-defeating rigidity. Black people need reform of our civil rights strategies as badly as those in the law needed a new way to consider American jurisprudence prior to the advent of the legal realists. By viewing the law, and by extension, the courts, as instruments for preserving the status quo and only periodically and unpredictably serving as a refuge of oppressed people, Blacks can refine the work of the realists. Rather than challenging the entire jurisprudential system as the realists did, Blacks' focus must be much narrower, a challenge to the principle of racial equality. This new movement is appropriately called racial realism, and it is a legal and social mechanism on which Blacks can rely to have their voice and outrage heard. Reliance on rigid application of the law is no less damaging or ineffectual simply because it is done for the sake of ending discriminatory racial practices.
Wow, that was intense. Thank you.
I might have to sit with it.
Now we're on pages 337 to 334. I would urge that we begin this review with a statement that many will wish to deny, but none can refute. It is this: Black people will never gain full equality in this country. Even those Herculean, I know what it means, y'all. Herculeans, yeah, I know what it means. I just, I'm a reader, not a talker. Efforts we hail as successful will produce no more than temporary peaks of progress, short-lived victories that slide into irrelevancies, racial patterns, adapt in ways that maintain white dominance. This is a hard to accept fact that all history verifies. We must acknowledge it and move on to adopt policies based on what I call racial realism. This mindset or philosophy requires us to acknowledge the permanence of our subordinate status. That acknowledgement enables us to avoid despair and frees us to imagine and implement racial strategies that can bring fulfillment and even triumph. Okay, Nikki, I'm calling you, but I know this is hefty. Are you okay?
Not are you okay?
Okay.
I think so.
Oh. We're not trying to hurt anybody's eyes here.
All right. Legal precedents we thought permanent have been overturned, distinguished, or simply ignored. All too many of the Black people we sought to live through law from subordinate status to equal opportunity are more deeply mired in poverty and despair than they were during the separate but equal era. During our successful effort to strip the law endorsement from the hated Jim Crow signs, contemporary color barriers are less visible, but neither less real nor less oppressive. Today, one can travel for thousands of miles across this country and never come across a public facility designated for colored or white. Indeed, the very absence of visible signs of discrimination creates an atmosphere of racial neutrality that encourages whites to believe that racism is a thing of the past. Today, Blacks experiencing rejection for a job, a home, a promotion, anguish over whether race or individual failing prompted their exclusion. Either conclusion breeds frustration and eventual despair. We call ourselves African Americans, but despite centuries of struggle, none of us, no matter our prestige or position, is more than a few steps away from a racially motivated exclusion. It is surely possible community in general.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, got you.
Alright, period.
Okay, so we'll use this one then. So I'll read this one and then I'll pass this to you, Tynetta, to pass around. Okay. Oh yeah, can we go to the next slide, please? No problem. Thank you. As a veteran of a civil rights era that is now over, I regret the need to explain what went wrong. Clearly, we need to examine what it was about our reliance on racial remedies that may have prevented us from recognizing that these legal rights could do little more than bring about the cessation of one form of discriminatory conduct that soon appeared in a more subtle, though no less discriminatory form. The question is whether this examination requires us to redefine goals of racial equality and opportunity to which Blacks have adhered for more than a century. The answer must be a resounding yes. Who should I pass it to? Thank you, of course.
Great, glad the audio is better. Thank you for your patience, everyone online.
Right here. Thank you. Traditional civil rights law is highly structured and founded on the belief that the Constitution was intended, at least after the Civil War amendments, to guarantee equal rights to Blacks. The belief in eventual racial justice and the litigation and legislation based on that belief was always dependent on the ability of believers to remain faithful to their creed of racial equality while rejecting the contrary message of discrimination that survived their best efforts to control or eliminate it.
Racism translates into a societal vulnerability of Black people that few politicians, including our last two presidents, seem able to resist. And why not? The practice of using Blacks as scapegoats for failed economic or political policies works every time. The effectiveness of the racial bonding by whites requires that Blacks seek a new and more realistic goal of our civil rights activism. It is time we concede that a commitment to racial equality merely perpetuates our disempowerment. Rather, we need a mechanism to make life bearable in a society where Blacks are a permanent, subordinate class. Our empowerment lies in recognizing that racial realism may open a gateway to attaining a more meaningful status.
Caesar, can I ask you to read?
Thank you. While implementing racial realism, we must simultaneously acknowledge that our actions are not likely to lead to transcendent change, and despite our best efforts, may be of more help to the system we despise than to the victims of that system we are trying to help. Nevertheless, our realization and the dedication based on that realization can lead to policy positions and campaigns that are less likely to worsen conditions for those we are trying to help, and will be more likely to remind those in power that there are imaginative, unabashed risk takers who refuse to be trampled upon. Yet confrontation with our oppressors is not our sole reason for engaging in racial realism. Continued struggle can bring about unexpected benefits and gains that in themselves justify continued endeavor. The fight in itself has meaning and should give us hope for the future. It's good. Okay. Continued struggle can bring about unexpected benefits and gains that in themselves justify continued endeavor. The fight in itself has meaning and should give us hope for the future.
I am convinced that there is something real out there in America for Black people. It is not, however, the romantic love of integration. It is surely not the long-sought goal of equality under law, though we must maintain the struggle against racism, else the erosion of Black rights will become even worse than it is now. The radical realism that we must seek is simply a hard-eyed view of racism as it is and our subordinate role in it. We must realize as our slave forebearers that the struggle for freedom is at bottom a manifestation of our humanity that survives and grows stronger through resistance to oppression, even if that oppression is never over.
I volunteered to read this because this was my favorite passage. I have it here.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. A final remembrance may help make my point. The year was 1964. It was a quiet, heat-hushed evening in Harmony, a small Black community near the Mississippi Delta. Some Harmony residents, in the face of increasing white hostility, were organizing to ensure implementation of a court order mandating desegregation of their schools the next September. Walking with Mrs. Deanna McDonald, one of our organizers, up a dusty, unpaved road towards her modest home, I asked her where she found the courage to continue working for civil rights in the face of intimidation that included her son losing his job in town, the local bank trying to foreclose on her mortgage, and shots fired through her living room window. Derrick, she said slowly, seriously, I am an old woman. I lives to harass white folks.
Oh yeah, no, you can do it.
Mrs. McDonald did not say she risked everything because she hoped or expected to win out over the whites who, as she well knew, had all the economic and political power and the guns as well. Rather, she recognized that, powerless as she had and intended to use courage and determination as weapons to harass white folks. Her fight in itself gave her strength and empowerment in a society that relentlessly attempted to wear her down. Mrs. McDonald did not even hint that her harassment would topple whites' well-entrenched power. Rather, her goal was defiance, and its harassing effect was more potent precisely because she placed herself in confrontation with her oppressors with full knowledge of their power and willingness to use it. Mrs. McDonald avoided discouragement and defeat because at that point, she determined to resist her oppression. She was triumphant. Nothing the all-powerful whites could do to her would diminish her triumph. Mrs. McDonald understood 25 years ago the theory that I am espousing in the 1990s for Black leaders and civil rights lawyers to adopt. If you remember her story, you will understand my message. Want to close us out? I don't know. You the circle keeper. You say, look, like we close.
Yes, I am the circle keeper. Very great. First, thank you all for being here today. I hope that the reading of the text provided something for you. We read some really small pieces, a very large and impactful text. So if you could take the time to find them, to read them in your own time, to have circles with people in your life, it'll be really impactful, right? Because for every one person that emails their senator, there's 10 people behind them. I don't know if you've ever heard that, this organizer speak. So yeah, I just want to make sure that folks take the time after this space, one, to give feedback on the screen by scanning it with your phone, but then two, to also reflect on these texts in your personal life. We're going to have a 30-minute session where we'll do some more conversation and we will facilitate a group reflection. Before that, we're going to reflect on 2 questions because we have time that I would love for folks to share. Don't feel like you have to, about how they are feeling right now and how is your body and your mind receiving what we read together. I will start how I'm feeling. Okay, I say this all the time, but I'm lit every day. This is true. This is a fact because I live to harass white people, and yeah, it's an intense life for me. And to see this reading and have that articulated in the way that it was is something that I didn't know other people experienced in the world until we embarked on this journey together, me and Dr. Ford, to have this reading circle. I do believe that Black folks have power, and I grapple with the excited, like we are powerful in our very essence of being and of existence, and also the acceptance of being a permanent lower racial dominant lower racial class and in existence. So I think I'm kind of like moving through these texts, really assessing how I want to show up in the world. In terms of the Combahee River Collective Statement, I am a member of Black Youth Project 100. And as a person in that space, they're 18 to 35-year-olds who do organizing work all over the country. I have read the Combahee River Collective so many times. In fact, it was my Wi-Fi password at one point. It was like River 1977. Don't hack into my Wi-Fi, please. So that is what I'm experiencing. And I will reread those questions. And if other folks want to share what they're experiencing, that would be great.